you're building this company? You're the CEO of this company? Are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, look at everything that I've done, right? Um,
Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Business Talk Library, and today I am fortunate to have a guest on, and I came across her profile on LinkedIn because of an event that she was very, very, very critical in pulling off, and I think was great for just the entire city of Charlotte, actually the greater Charlotte community. And it was the Charlotte Innovation Week, bringing entrepreneurs in and really creating that ecosystem where people can really develop a business, be encouraged, and also just exchange those ideas. So welcome to the show, Lynn.
Thanks so much, Terrell. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome, awesome. Now, I know you and I talked a little bit, exchanged some information. You're not originally from Charlotte, so tell us a little bit about where you're from.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's really from Charlotte, right? That's what I'm learning. So I'm originally from Philly, but I say that I'm 20 minutes outside of Philly. And I just moved here from New York City about, I think, 8 months now.
Okay, so what brought about the interest to come to Charlotte when you're from Philly and then you were in New York? Like, why Charlotte?
Um, yeah, I say against my own will because my partner moved here for a job. But actually, we came here and visited for 5 days, and we ended up falling in love with it. It's just being from like a small suburban town and then New York City, it just made sense. It was that perfect combination of both of them. And the startup scene here is booming, so it made a lot of sense as an ecosystem builder in New York.
Okay, awesome. So now your business, the 2.0 Collective, tell us a little bit about that business.
Yeah, sure. So the 2.0 Collective is your home base for career advancement. It's dynamic, personalized career support for every career move that you're going to make. So usually career advancement and career coaching is usually reserved for CEOs, fat cats of the business world. But what we're doing is we're democratizing that for early in career professionals. And the same way that athletes have agents, we believe that every professional should have the same kind of support.
Okay, and I think that that's a big thing because during my time at GE, that was one of the very big things that a lot of mentors talked about is, if you're going to navigate your career journey, or I guess if you're going to have a career journey, it helps to have someone to help you navigate that.
Yeah.
Because there's some things that just are not just intuitive. You're not just born knowing. And there's some things that you're going to come up with, that you're going to have questions with. So it's always good to have someone to help you kind of fill in some of those gaps for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so stupid that, we didn't learn these things in school. We didn't learn it in college. And one thing in particular is like we help minorities, people of color, really kind of pave the way for themselves in the workforce because every situation is so different, and dealing with like being a woman in the boardroom and not being able to get a say, or being a Black person and needing an ally to speak up for you when you're thinking about getting a bonus, right? Those are things that people need to think about. And I think that you always seek out your friends or your mom or your dad, but they may not be able to give you the best career advice through that. And, traditional career coaching, only so many coaches are able to really help you with what you're going through,
And I think I would say I am a very huge advocate of that approach because I'm one that came from, a first generation college student. Even when I look at my extended family, like from cousins, uncles, aunts, and, there wasn't anyone that I had been in corporate America that I could even leverage information from. So I think a resource like that is tremendous and it is very helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. And what we want to do is that we want to standardize the way that the job process and hiring process works. I think that there's so much more to you than just your career advancement. You have to talk about, your personal life, right? And one of the first things that we always ask any of our members that come into the collective is, what are your check boxes? And like people say like, oh, I want to form an all girls biker gang. I want to have kids. I want to have a dog. All of these things that don't really talk about your career. And we realize that, we are more than our jobs, right? And that's why knowing about these check boxes are so important, so that we can connect with, your bosses and your colleagues when you're trying to build this dream career, right? You got to know about all of those aspects of your life.
Awesome. Sorry. So tell us a little bit about, how did you even come up with the idea to start this type of company?
Yeah. I think I have always been one for untraditional career paths and untraditional career moves. Back when I was in college, I tried to find the internship that could harness all of the things that I learned in school and all of my interests. And I've always been someone that just like is doing anything and everything to figure out what I love, right? I think everyone is trying to figure out what they want to do in life. But, when you ask an 18-year-old that, they have no clue, right? So I could never find that. I had no clue. And I ended up making my own job full-time career when I was a sophomore in college, working full-time and also going to school full-time. And it ended up helping a established company build a new brand. And that was the first taste of like a startup life that I could have right there. Ended up working there for about 3 years. And through that role, actually, I found out that a lot of my other peers and postgraduate friends were struggling to find jobs. Or they would get their dream job, like Goldman Sachs, and then 6 months later, they're like, I hate it. I need to move, right? So it just didn't make sense that there were all of these amazing jobs out there, all of these amazing opportunities and amazing people, but they couldn't find each other. And that's where I found out about the talent gap and how deep it's getting. So that's where it initially came from.
Yeah, okay. So how was it, I mean, in New York City, just building out a new business like this? I mean, did you run into a lot of competition, or were there people who are clients that actually, gravitated to the concept of what you were trying to do?
Yeah. I think, when we were initially building it, it made a lot of sense in my head. And I think a lot of founders go through the same thing. They have this huge idea, right? But being in the startup world and helping a lot of other people with their startups, it was that you need to just find that one niche, right? That one little problem to solve. And, that's what kept me going. But being a 5 foot tall Asian girl who looks very young, I was constantly running into that, right? That one obstacle, which was like, you're building this company? You're the CEO of this company? Are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, look at everything that I've done, right? But it doesn't matter, because as soon as they see me, it's kind of like they just like shut down. So that was one that was constant. And actually that's how I found my business partner. He was this tall, like 6'2" man, white male. And I was like, hey, you speak really well and you have a good head on your shoulders. You have great ideas. You want to be my ally in this? He's like, what? What do you mean? And I realized that was like how I started finding, my wingman, right? Like my hustle buddies, which would help me get to where I needed to be and like believed in me, right? And was able to forge the path for me.
And I think that's a good thing to be aware of, because that was something that I learned, just, that being honest with yourself about, hey, although the prejudice that you may face may not be true and it may not be fair, but it's just like, how do you find a way to work around it to still get your goal accomplished?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And that was the one thing that was driving me, that like what we're solving is bigger than me. Right. And I was just one person that experienced this and one person that wanted success. And I know that I could work towards that, but I needed people to give me a chance. And that's the same way that the 2.0 works, right? You need someone that believes in you more than you believe in yourself sometimes, to remind you that, what you're doing is worth it, and that, you can totally do it. You just need someone to give you a kick in the ass.
So when it comes to, the 2.0 collective, would you say, are your clients the individuals that you're working with, or are they the companies that you're interacting with?
Yeah. So they're both of them. We started out just working with startups and being able to connect really interesting entrepreneur types and intrapreneur types with startups. But now it's actually both. So a lot of individuals will come to us and say, I'm looking for a job, or I'm looking to, jump ship and leave my job. And from there, we find that we're able to get a bigger look at their career picture. And we find out, other problems that are underlying in their job itself, maybe with their manager or with a colleague, right? And from there, we're able to actually work with the employees or with the employer and give them that resource. So we also act as an employee benefit for them.
Okay.
We act as an additional resource for the managers, the supervisors, able to help them ensure employee retention, meet their benchmarks. I think a lot of people don't know, but the first 18 months that a new hire is brought on, they may be laid off or fired within the first 6, right? Because they need to really hit their benchmarks. And really, it's just the employer that may not be clear enough with them about that. Yeah.
And I would say, as a hiring manager, in the past, I definitely experienced that from observing other hiring managers when they would hire someone and they would say, hey, I'm having challenges with this new person that I hired. And I would always ask the question, I'm like, all right, you took them through the interview process. They met all the criteria that you needed. I'm like, could it be that you're probably not laying the roadmap out for them, or, the objectives aren't clear? Because they great when you hired them. What happened?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's actually a Charlotte startup here. I think they're based out in Davidson at the Herd Hub. So Hire Brain, which is run by David Mason, he told me so much about this. And they actually focus on the hiring process itself, that when a new hire is onboarded, we spend maybe 2 hours on each employee, barely, right? So obviously within that new time where you come in and you're learning stuff, shouldn't you be spending more time on each person, right? And there's just so much wrong with it that, our focus is how can we help the individuals get the most support that they can rather than the employers, right? Because there are no courses for hiring managers, right?
Yes.
You're just all right, this is who I need, right? That's it. We're just as confused as you are, if not more. Yeah.
And I experienced that even when working with, big Fortune 500 companies like GE or Navistar, where, hiring managers, they had some resources to kind of help, with that onboarding. But then when you get into the startup environment, I imagine that they have even less resources to help someone get started well.
Oh yeah. No money at all, right? How are you supposed to afford half of this stuff? So yeah, I mean, I think everyone learns so differently too. And to be able to give each person that individualized support is really hard. So giving startups a resource like that is really important.
Okay. So how do you find the way to build the relationships with these startups to actually provide that service, or let them know that, hey, you offer that service?
Yeah. We just started this in Charlotte recently, but obviously with this furlough, it's really difficult. But in New York, what we were able to do was, it was mostly direct to the startups itself. So going through 2 different pitch competitions, different CEO founder groups, and being able to say, hey, if you're trying to build your company and grow your company, you should be doing it smart, right? You should be doing permanent hires that actually are people that, will stick around instead of just restarting this entire process 6 months again. Yeah.
Okay. Now, something else that also stood out was the Seed the South event. Now, you were the director on the Seed the South event. Tell us a little bit about that event, and what was like one or two highlights you had from that event.
Yeah. So Seed the South is an angel investor symposium and early stage pitch competition. So this was our second year, I think, but I recently moved. So I walked right into Charlotte into this role. Never have done this before. But I love startups and I love this, investment world, right? So, we had about 6 months to build out this entire conference.
Oh, wow.
And we actually doubled in size. So it was a 2-day conference, so many panels, and we had a lot of investors who came from all over the country to sit on the panel. So it's really awesome. Yeah, and we had about, I think, 40 startups that entered into our pitch competition, and we were able to give away $20,000 in total, I think.
Okay, nice, nice. So how did you even get involved, I guess, when you moved here? Like, how did you even get involved with the event?
Yeah, I moved here knowing no one, knowing nothing. And those 5 days when I came and visited, I tried to talk to as many people in the startup world as possible. And I think everyone who tries to enter into the startup world here, it's pretty much the same 5 people that you need to meet. They're like Charlotte famous people. One of them was Sam Smith, and I actually didn't meet her in that first week. I got a phone call with her. 15 minutes, she was driving to Raleigh, and we had a great conversation. She was like, okay, great. When you move here, let's get lunch. And then as soon as we sat down, she's like, okay, so you're the director of Seed the South. I was like, oh, okay, all right, sure, let's do this thing. Yeah. And it's actually part of this like greater coalition called which is for minority investors and startup founders, mostly for women. So it was definitely something that was near and dear to my heart. Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So what was that experience like? I mean, what were some of the things that you kind of learned with working with the Seed the South event?
Yeah. It's exactly like working with a startup, but just with nonprofit rules. It was so much fun. It was a lot of fun, but it was, very small team. It was really just me and her. And she was traveling the world working on her own startup at this time in an accelerator. So I barely got to see her, and it was a really cool experience to be able to work with a CEO where you have like direct line with her all the time and see all of the different, startup moves that they're making. And at the same time, go and represent her and the company at all of these different events. And, I met so many people so quickly. So it was really interesting to see that this community is so tight knit and everyone knows each other by name. And it was just, it was so nurturing. And, New York is definitely not like that, right? Like just cut through and you either make it or you don't, Yeah.
I think that's a very interesting thing about, the Charlotte, the startup environment that I've heard, because, when I talk to friends that live in Chicago or friends that live in New York or even some out on the West Coast, I mean, the startups are there. And even the ones in Atlanta. But it's at a point where it's so big that some of them feel like, it's hard to really get in and navigate it, to where I feel like Charlotte is definitely continuing to rise, but it has that connected feel to where, you start meeting, one person, and it allows you to meet other people, and they actually know each other by name, not just, hey, I heard about this person, but they actually know each other.
Right. Yeah. Everyone is just so willing to help. And like, I think that was why it was like a natural step for us to move the collective here. The willingness to help and just like everyone thinking of each other. I think that that's something that we all need to foster. And like Seed the South was definitely the perfect event for showing, the world that we had people from, Atlanta, Texas, California come, and they were like, wow, this is way different than what we're used to. Right. And when I moved here, like I went to these ecosystem meetings and people were like, okay, we're falling behind to like San Francisco, New York. And I was like, hold on, we're falling behind to like Dallas and Nashville, right? Like we have to really catch up to them. But even so, I think that that's our value proposition, right? Like that's what differentiates us, that we're way more willing to help and like lift each other up than being like cutthroat like San Francisco, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, are there any plans or thoughts of, I guess, I mean, we don't know the full details, but are thoughts about Seed the South events in the future?
So Seed the South is, I believe it's still going to be a part of Charlotte Innovation Week.
Okay.
This year was the first ever Charlotte Innovation Week. It was a week of celebrating the state of Charlotte's innovation, so it was really fun. But so before the quarantine, we were looking to put together a board of advisors and really start planning out the rest of the Charlotte Innovation Weeks to come. But basically, it's the same theme, which is we need to take a look at our innovation, what we're doing, and what makes Charlotte innovation, right? Obviously, fintech is a big one. Startup innovation is a big one. What other things can we be doing to help that even further, right? Because we are falling behind, and I think it's just because we haven't had the resources that the other cities have had. But I definitely think that we'll be getting there soon.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about the Charlotte Innovation Week.
Yeah, it was 5 days, and each day there were a couple of different events. One was a prop tech event. We also had the Flatiron School and Black Tech Charlotte host a coding workshop and a resume building workshop.
Awesome.
Seed the South was the headliner event of the entire week. So that was on Wednesday and Thursday in January, and it was awesome. It felt like the entire city was coming together to support one cause.
Nice.
It was really awesome. And so many nonprofits and organizations got to come out and for once be spotlighted by people who didn't normally go to these types of events, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was really cool. We also had our first ever full week sponsor, and that was Tabaris, which was a co-working space that just opened up. And they're like a startup incubator, so very cool as well. Yeah, and Charlotte Inno had an awards ceremony, so it was
wow, nice.
Yeah, it was like a big frat party. It felt like that's what it felt like with everyone. There was karaoke, there was a lot of food and drinks, and I was tired the entire week, but it just felt like that night everyone just let loose, so it was really fun.
So how was it pulling all of that together? Because that sounds like a lot.
Yeah, I feel like I fell into that position. I started out as the director of Seed the South and working with Sam, and then her and Juan Garzon, I think he's the editor of Charlotte Inno. And they were like, okay, we're going to have an event on this day. We're going to have an event on this day. Why don't we just make an entire week out of it? And, we just started talking, and I was like, all right, I'll figure it out. And, I think, with an event like that, there's no company behind it, right? It's just a bunch of people who want to come together to make shit happen. And it did. We all just wanted to support each other and make sure that there was a space for everyone's mission to be shown, right? Like veteran entrepreneurship, minority business owners, like all of these people coming together. And it felt just like one cause that was really driving the whole thing, which was really awesome. And everyone came together. But it was really hard. It was like me running the Squarespace website, updating all of the information, going, hey, where are you? Do I need to do anything for this? And it was like the definition of like bootstrapping early stages of a company. It was just like, all right, you think of it, I'll just do it. And it was like 3-4 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, strapping everything together. Yeah.
So what was your team size like to pull that off?
It was me. It was another woman. Her name's Paige. She works for Tabaris, and she was helping me put together the website. Sam was focused on Seed the South and her company vision. And then Juan was getting the community to put together events. So day-to-day operations, it was really just me. And then people coming in and helping. Yeah. And then we brought on like 2 volunteer interns from UNCC. and they helped us send out a bunch of emails and social media. But yeah, it was rough. And it was hard because like we had the looks of a full-size company, right? Like we
Yes.
had the website, we had the social media. But that's what you got to do, right? So then other companies started coming up and going, hey, we want to work with you. Do you have this form, this tax ID, like all this stuff? We're like, no, we don't have any of that. So yeah, it definitely was really crappy because we wanted to give all of that financial freedom and financial resources to all of these organizations, but we couldn't because we didn't have those resources. So it definitely, told us that the system was kind of all messed up and it was like chicken and egg kind of thing. You have to have money in order to open up an organization, but if you don't have an organization, you can't have money. So, it was difficult, but yeah, it was cool because I had never worked operationally for a nonprofit like that before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, how many different companies did you have, or like what was the attendance like for Charlotte Innovation Week?
Yeah. So I'm going to also count Seed the South in there because that was the 2-day event. But we had, I believe, 15 organizations that had individual events. And then at Seed the South, we had, I believe, 50 sponsors and then another, I think, 40 startups. So add that all up. 15 plus 50 plus 40. 100, 115? 100. 105?
105, yeah, 105,
yeah.
yeah, 105.
You're the finance guy, the accounting guy. You should be able to do that.
Nice. That is a huge effort to try to pull all of that together. And then you said in what, 3 to 4 months?
Yeah. Moved here in August, and then it happened in January.
Okay. So what did you do in February to take a break?
What did I do in February? Right before quarantine happened. So from that time, I was just winding down from all of that, taking care of social media, all of the email thank yous. But that was when I actually got to take a breather and say, okay, what do I actually want to do in Charlotte? What do I actually want to do with my time here? And I knew that I wanted to move the collective here, most definitely. But, how did I want to do it? How did I want to help Charlotte specifically? And my dream is to have a 2.0 in all the cities, right? A Charlotte 2.0, a New York 2.0, a Nashville 2.0, right? So I really wanted to figure out what the biggest problems were. And I had been doing that for the past, 5 months before that, talking to every CEO, talking to every investor, say, okay, what is missing from the startup scene here? What is missing from the ecosystem? And they kept saying over and over, talent, tech talent, good talent, people that want to stay here and build their lives here. And I was like, that's exactly what my company does. How can I do this? And my idea was, okay, I'm going to wait till the collective, I can develop it for another year, right? Like I want to have some time. I feel like I had 3 full-time jobs in the span of 6 months. So I told myself that I was going to spend some time to really figure out what Charlotte needed, right? And then coronavirus hit and people started going, okay, I've been furloughed, I've been laid off. Can you please just, start it here? I really need help. So now we're operating in New York and Charlotte and helping people find jobs and find their 2.0.
Awesome. Well, I think all of that is, it is a lot in such a short period of time. So I am glad to see that you are still standing.
Thank you. Barely. But I think, unfortunately, I'm one of the few people who are benefiting from being locked inside, despite the pandemic that's going on. But I think it's a really awesome time for people to really look at themselves and say, okay, what can I really be doing at this time, right? I have nothing else to do.
Yeah, I definitely think that even in interviewing, some of the interviews that I've done, I think this week I've done, I think this is interview number 10. And
oh how are you still standing? Your voice.
I don't know. There's I think yesterday after I finished number 9, I was just like, I told my wife, I was like, I'm a bit tired. I just like laid on the floor and just
Yeah.
looked up at the ceiling. 'Cause
Oh my God. You should have canceled on me. I wouldn't have been okay.
no, not at all, not at all. I mean, like I said, it is definitely. I'm learning a lot, just
Yeah.
from talking to so many different entrepreneurs and just kind of hearing their story. And you don't realize, like I said, how many great resources are out there.
Right.
And like I said, I know you probably experienced the same thing when it's with the with the 2.0, which is meeting all of this talent that's out there and just
Mhm.
helping them figure out a way of, hey, how do you get what you can do exposed to other people who need your
Right.
service or who need your type of talent? So, I mean, I
Yeah.
think that it definitely is a great time, I think, to really focus on, hey, how can you either rebrand your message or how can you rebrand yourself? And I
Yeah.
think people should definitely take advantage of this time to really figure out, some of those things that they haven't had time to think about before.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And that was the one thing also that people said was missing from Charlotte, a kind of hub and a place for people to go with all of these resources.
Mhm.
So that's actually our secret weapon of 2.0. We have this thing called an opportunity pipeline where we have an entire database of all the talent and where they're at in their careers right now, all of the resources, all of the jobs, and they're all under our same 2.0 framework with those checkboxes, like what matters to you, who are you,
Mhm.
and all of those resources, all of those jobs and people. Anytime anyone needs anything, we're able to give this like personalized support to them.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't think anything like that exists out there, right? A place
Mhm.
to bring all of this stuff together. Um, and the city is starting to put together actually COVID resources, an entire database of all the startup small businesses that are still operating during this time.
Mhm.
So they're definitely hopping on that bandwagon as well as having that like centralized hub of resources. So I'm glad that everyone's trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and I think that that's a huge benefit that the 2.0 it has, is just not only being able to say, hey, here's a candidate, here's their profile, you can get them in the door, but also just to kind of walk with them throughout their full career.
Yeah,
Whereas it's not just, hey, here, let me get you in the door, but it's just like, hey, I'll also help you, give you the resources to help you continue along that journey after you get in the door. So I think that's a very, very huge advantage that you have with 2.0.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, resume building is resume building, right? LinkedIn profiles, like all of that is very, you know, bottom bottom based, right? Like that's the
Hmm.
standard now. How can you stand out even more from that? And like even if you're not looking for a job, right? Like how can you be giving yourself what you deserve and hitting those benchmarks that you have for yourself, right? Um,
Hmm.
and I don't think people think about that enough. I think they're just like, okay, I'm gonna live the life that I want to live, and then it'll just happen, but it doesn't just happen, right? You actually got to do some work. And I think that that's what's fun about us. We're like a bunch of Jack and Jills of all trades,
Hmm.
which I think people think is a bad thing. But when you know a little bit about a lot, you can start figuring out, oh, hey, like you might be interested in this, or you might love this, right? And be able to suggest things to people that actually make sense.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. A lot
Yeah,
of
because
fun.
that's something that whenever I was, I guess when I was working in the corporate world, I guess I left my role in from Passport back in
Yeah,
March. It's kind of a planned exit. My wife and I wanted to focus a little bit more on the business talk library and kind of
right.
our own practice. So one of the things that I would do that I learned as a hiring manager is every so often I sit down with the people on my team and say, all right, we need to pull your resume out and I think we need to take a look at it. And of course, calm them down. I'm not trying to fire you. I
Yeah.
just need you, I just need you to make sure that what you're doing today, it still
Yeah.
fits into the goal of where you're trying to go.
Yeah.
And just asking them to, hey, if I'm giving you assignments that aren't helping you get there, hey, let's look at that. Let's see what can we change. What kind of assignments or what kind of projects do you need to be working on, or can I advocate for you to be on?
Right.
Because what you're doing today should fit into the big picture of where you're trying to go. And I think
Yeah.
the 2.0 definitely sounds like a solution that's really there to provide that. So I think that's huge.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wish every manager did that, right? Like if every manager looked out for their employees like that, I feel like I wouldn't need to exist, right? We wouldn't need to have this conversation. But that's the goal, definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So, in building your company, and I know you probably have tons of wisdom to share. What is one thing that you would say, hey, you've learned this lesson, or this has been a very big lesson that you've learned in the process of building your company, or even working with Seed the South or Charlotte Innovation Week?
Yeah. Um, I think I think it's having this uh, relaunch mindset. Kind of like, when you're first building a company, and if you talk to any mentor or entrepreneur, they're always like, what's your MVP, right?
Mhm.
Even if you're like pitching to an investor, right? I think always thinking about that as an entrepreneur, as a founder, when you're building something, to say like, okay, what is my next MVP? What are the minimum necessary features and requirements that I need to make for my next goal?
Mhm.
Because I think it's very easy for entrepreneurs to have these big ideas and like go crazy with them. So if you can just like have that, it's kind of like the 2.0 mindset. Like, what's your next upgrade? What's your next improvement that you need to make? What are just like the minimum things that you need to do?
Mhm.
And then just check those off, and then you'll be good, right? And it'll help ground you in your day-to-day operations and like how you spend your time. Because like, I mean, like for every entrepreneur, it's like time is money, right? You only have
Mhm.
so many hours in the day to do stuff, and you can't be working 24 hours every single day. So
Yes.
yeah. And I think that that's how like you can optimize time the most. Um, yeah, and get a good
Awesome.
planner. I like writing my stuff down. I like using Asana and like moving stuff over. I love that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that that one is that's a very big one. I think people underestimate the value of actually, taking the time to plan things out.
Yeah, totally. And like replanning out, right? Like almost acting like every feature that you put out is just as important, because I think like everyone is like, okay, the launch is like the most important thing, right? Like you're going to be like launching like the rest of your career, right? Every feature you put out technically is a launch.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think it keeps it fun.
Awesome. Awesome. So
Yeah.
before we go, where can people follow you? Where can they find the 2.0 Collective? And if you're on social media, what name should they be looking for to find you?
Yeah, sure. So the 2.0 Collective, the website is the20.co. And all social media is the 2.0 co. And if people want to find me, I don't know why, but they can. It's Lynn Hugh Long, LynnHueLuong, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you for sharing all the wisdom,
Yeah, thank you.
and all the best. We'll definitely keep our eye out for what you have coming down the line.
Yeah, definitely. I'll have to hit you up for accounting secrets and tips and tricks. So yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.